US and Iranian delegations meeting in Pakistan have failed to reach a deal to end the conflict in the Middle East. After talks that ran through the night, the US Vice President J.D. Vance said the Iranians had not accepted what he called the US's final offer. Iranian media blamed what it called unreasonable demands by the US. Our South Asia correspondent Azadeh Mashiri is in Islamabad.
This is what happens. The peace talks, the negotiation talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, between United States and Iran are not happening. It's been cancelled.
The US Vice President J.D. Vance left in the early hours of the morning after he said that the United States had needed a fundamental commitment from Iran not to develop nuclear weapons. Iran, for its part, has called the US demands unreasonable. Now, what has actually been achieved here in Pakistan? Our correspondent Joe Inwood has this report on high-stakes.
This is what happened. US and Iran failed to reach agreement at peace talks. What it is, JD Vance came to front and telling us what really happens. They are two of the best men who went to Islamabad, Pakistan as a US officials.
Talks that seem to have reached an impasse.
After 21 hours of negotiations, the US Vice President left without a deal. The face-to-face meeting had been historic, but may be remembered as a failure of diplomacy. J.D. Vance had arrived in Pakistan for talks with the Speaker of Iran's parliament and Foreign Minister, trying to bring more than a month of fighting to an end. The press were kept well away amidst heavy security. No one was saying much.
An intense struggle is underway on the diplomatic front. I assure our good people that we will use all our capacities to consolidate our country's achievements and to defend Iran's existence.
This is what really happens, guys. JD once said, Iran choose not to accept our terms. That is the main cause we are not going with their own terms.
After 40 days of fighting and nearly 50 years of hostility between the US and Iran, there was a lot to discuss. For Iran, avoiding a repeat of the destruction of the last month was high up their agenda. They want guarantees it will not happen again. Top of the US agenda is the reopening of this vital waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has selectively but effectively blocked it. It's given them huge...
As we know already, that Strait of Hormuz is open but then again closed because of the violation of ceasefire by Israeli government side.
Leverage that they did not have before the war. Iran wants something very different here. International recognition of its rights over the strait, maybe including the ability to charge tolls to pass. Yesterday, the US claimed 2 naval destroyers had got through, clearing mines. Iran denied that, saying they'd driven the warship off. There are many other issues.
Okay, so the demands from the US, United States, President Donald Trump said that no nuclear weapon is our 99% priority, that Iran access no nuclear weapons.
For the US, nuclear weapons, Iran's ballistic missiles, as well as their regional proxies. While Iran wants reparations for the damage done by the war, the release of frozen assets, as well as an end to attacks on its allies in the region. And that final point looked like it could derail talks before they even began. Israel continued its attacks on the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah, even as the delegations were meeting in Pakistan. The health ministry here says more than 2,000 people have now been killed. As the talks went into the night, this was President Trump's assessment.
This is what President Donald Trump said about the talks failure between the negotiations, and here it is.
Regardless what happens, we win. We've totally defeated that country. And so let's see what happens. Maybe they make a deal, maybe they don't. Doesn't matter. From the standpoint of America, we win.
Then an update. After 21 hours of talks, the two sides had failed to reach a deal. The US said the main sticking point was nuclear weapons.
They really talked for 21 hours and they failed to beat a reach.
We have not reached an agreement, And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are.
As the US Vice President drove to the airport, Iranian state media said negotiations broke down due to unreasonable demands. These talks began amidst a spiraling war and apocalyptic threats. If their failure leads to a return to fighting, the
Yes, this is the main thing. Now they are fighting again. They are into war again. War is not at hold. War is happening and at double speed, double pace right now. Peace talks lasted 21 hours in Islamabad.
consequences will be felt around the world. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, as Joe said there, the talks went on long into the night, but also long into the early hours of the morning. We were all waiting for an update, and here's more of what J.D. Vance had to say when that finally came.
We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms.
This is what Vice President J.D. Vance has to say. This literal statement is being done into the Pakistan. Yes, this is Pakistan field.
Questions?
Sir, Vivek Verma from CNN. Precisely what have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we've negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that
They are enriching the nuclear things, okay? Uranium and all. They are saying they will, at any cost, Iran will, at any cost, have a nuclear weapon. They would be having a nuclear weapon at any cost.
they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will. Jen.
Was there a framework on anything? And also, did the Iranian frozen assets come up? And did you reach any conclusions on those frozen assets?
We talked about all those issues, Jen, and we talked about a number of issues beyond that. And so certainly those things came up. But again, we just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms.
Yes, this is the main thing. The terms US has right now 99% top priority at the nuclear weapon. They are not possessing it is the main thing. They are just denying that they do not possess nuclear weapons.
We were quite flexible. We were quite accommodating. The president told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the president throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the president consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team.
This is what it is happening. The team, the three people team here in Islamabad, Pakistan, constantly in communication with the US top leader officials like Trump and
because
all.
we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it. Thank you.
Final and best offer there. Well, it was a long 21 hours since J.D. Vance had arrived, which meant that here in Islamabad there was some hope that perhaps the two sides were seeing points of agreement, or at least points they could work on. Our correspondent, Caroline Davies, our Pakistan correspondent, was there when J.D. Vance and the American delegation were leaving their hotel. Here's her take.
Okay, let's see what JD Vance said when he is leaving the hotel. Go to United States back at 8.
The white building just behind me is the hotel where these talks were taking place. And in the moments after the press conference finished, we and other journalists ran from inside the conference centre just across the road to this point here to see what was happening with the US delegation. By the time we reached this point, there was already a convoy of cars lined up down the side of the hotel, including Pakistan security and the security that the American Vice President travels with. That convoy moved off fairly quickly, including an American flagged car, and away, taking the Vice President and the rest of the delegation away from the hotel and away from Islamabad. There was a palpable sense of disappointment in the hall when it was announced by Vice President J.D. Vance that there was no deal between the US and Iran. I think many people thought that it was a very long shot to try to find some form of longer-lasting peace settlement or some form of longer...
This is what it is, guys. There is no deal at all. This is what happened.
The US side that Iran's regime was so weakened by weeks of war that they would be willing to make certain concessions. Perhaps that perception has now changed.
Yes, they are not really weak right now. They have power. They are possessing powers. Let me show you what Iranian officials are did here.
Parliament, the Speaker of Parliament, he had said that one of their red lines is a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon as attacks continue against Hezbollah. Now, he had said that was a red line, a precondition that had to be met before negotiations could even be made. So let's speak to Nick Beek, our correspondent in Jerusalem. Nick, it's good to have you. What does all of this mean for what's going on between
Nick is in Jerusalem, Israel
and Lebanon? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had said that he was looking ahead to potential peace talks on Tuesday, but may there be a recalculation there now?
Good morning, Azadeh. Well, so far, no official reaction from the Israelis. There's been some report in the Israeli media that they were an official source, unnamed, saying that they weren't surprised that these talks have ended without an agreement.
Okay.
They saw Pakistan as not being an honest middleman in the midst of these discussions. Israel, of course, not invited to the negotiating table, even though it was shoulder to shoulder as it saw itself with the Americans in hitting Iran. So they didn't really want this process to exclude them any further. In terms of what happens next, you're absolutely right. What we've seen overnight is a continuation of what's been going over the past few days or so, certainly with the IDF, the Israeli military, hitting the south.
This is bad thing, okay? Israel officials, leaders are not even invited, and this is what it is happening. Let me show you some last
Whether
words.
he intensifies attacks in Lebanon. And it's worth pointing out, Azadeh, that as you said right at the start, the Israelis have said that what's going on between them and Hezbollah, a group, of course, that's backed by Iran, what's happening there in Lebanon is completely different from their strikes with the Americans on Iran. And of course,
this is complete different story, but they're trying to connect it and trying to everybody like Israel and all do not attack the Lebanon territory. Either it's Hezbollah or not, they do not want Israel to attack at Lebanon.
So
if they have ended with this impasse, because it's the highest level face-to-face talks we've seen between the United States and Iran since the Islamic Revolution in...
And this is very bad. They did not reach to any conclusion at all.